Over the past couple of years, I've been seeing a lot of videos discussing how the quality of gaming has declined. Whether it be single player,
Did I just do that?
multiplayer remakes, multiplayer shooters, sequels, multiplayer battle royale. Jesus, multiplayer games suck now. But there have still been some games that make you hold on and understand why people love gaming so much. So I want to take a look at the good and bad and understand what the current state of video games really is. Single-player games have been in a pretty decent state through the past couple of years. The shining example for me is Elden Ring. Every attack has so much weight to it and the atmosphere is so goddamn beautiful while being daunting too. Enemies actually put up a fight, and you bet your ass once you beat that dick that gave you so much trouble, it's going to fill you fork, god damn it. But I think part of why people love Elden Ring so much is how well structured it is. Even though the game is absolutely massive, it still has ways of guiding you while also not giving you too much hand-holding. When you wake up, the game gives you the option to play the tutorial and then throws you into the world. And sure, you can charge dick first into every boss in the game, but if you do that, you're probably going to get shit-faced faster than my uncle on Thanksgiving. Elden Ring encourages you to explore the world, because if you don't, then you're going to have a terrible time fighting bosses, and the entire experience feels incredibly rewarding because of that. Most games will make you go to some NPC and they'll initiate a side quest, or you'll just head towards the main quest and focus on that. The genius thing about Elden Ring is that it doesn't really have a main or side quest while still basically having both. Like, take the Weeping Peninsula. It's basically just a side quest where you go to a castle and fight a couple goons and then fight a big bitch. But there's never really a specific goal that you need to complete. You can choose to beat the boss and get some runes and a cool weapon, or just not do that. Freedom is a great way to describe Elden Ring, and this castle is one of the best examples. I didn't even know it existed on my first playthrough, and it's great to see how many ways someone can play through the game, especially with the classes in the beginning. Jesus Christ, there's so many. The bosses have so much variety, and there's so many different weapons. There's just so much to do in this game. That's without even mentioning outside stuff like mods, speedruns, and random challenges. There's so much replay value with the outside sources, and it allows you to just keep playing something that you want more of. This is without even mentioning the expansion pack coming out, but my point with all of this is that Elden Ring has a shit ton of replayability, not only with the base game, but with the community efforts too. Pre-mentioned expansion pack, it's just a completely polished package that's well worth the $60 price tag. Then there's Callisto Protocol. Callisto Protocol was a horror game, massively influenced by Dead Space. It got hyped up and it was a complete failure. It wasn't a good game. Fuck this! It didn't do very well financially. It was just a bad time. But why was it so bad? I feel like you can ask the same question about Callisto Protocol that you can with pretty much every other game. Is this worth playing? So in Callisto Protocol's case, is it worth playing a $60, $70 for consoles horror game that's completely broken on launch, constantly stuttering, glitching out with a laughably broken combat system that will make you frustrated, while also launching only a couple months before the Dead Space remake comes out? I can't say a whole lot more about Callisto Protocol because I haven't played it, but I've seen a good chunk of videos, good chunk of reviews, and it's always the same problems. The game stutters more than a socially awkward middle schooler, and the combat system is slow, tedious, and boring. Callisto also lacks replayability. Replayability is extremely valuable in gaming because it means people keep playing your game, and if they like it enough, then, well, maybe they'll recommend your game to other people, or go even a step further, make mods for your game. All of a sudden your game is on this fucking pedestal. I think a lack of replayability hurts single player games more, since, for example, multiplayer games will feel different every time, and that's great. But single player games aren't going to feel different every time. Look at a game like God of War Ragnarok. Amazing fucking game that will give you dozens of hours of content, but I don't feel like replaying it. I tried once and realized that not only are the cutscenes incredibly long, but they're also unskippable. And even if they were skippable, it doesn't have a New Game Plus mode, so you're going to be stuck with the pathetic Kratos instead of the Chad God Kratos you had in your last playthrough. This might be added in the future, so that's good, but by then I'm going to move on to other games. Ragnarok is more of a one-time experience, and it's a damn good experience that improves on practically everything that 2018 God of War did, but the replayability really isn't there. Man, after talking about all these great games, I feel like jumping in some shit, and where better to start than Ubisoft! Man, this company sucks ass. They're pretty well known for making copy and paste content and constantly saying, hey guys, yes, we're making another Assassin's Creed that will be extremely similar to the last game with no impactful changes except, hey, I mean, you can be a Viking now. Why is no one clapping? I feel like Ubisoft is just in free fall right now and are a perfect textbook example of corporate chasing trends. You had Ghost Recon Frontline that was trying to rip off of Call of Duty, which went very well for them. I'm sure some of the devs at Ubisoft genuinely care about the games they make, but are just shut down by, no, we need to make a game every year, and it doesn't matter if it's shit, we just need to sell some copies. Pokemon has a very similar cycle where every year they pump out some hot garbage that looks like it jumps straight out of the GameCube with very clear lack of effort. But the most painful part is people keep buying it, and it is a lot of people. Pokemon makes me remember that people talk about how good AAA games used to be and how shitty they are now, and honestly, people are pretty right about that. Pokemon used to be this giant, amazing experience, and now it's just the same thing every year. And I think part of it is because releasing games a decade or longer ago meant that you had to make something good. Video games just weren't as popular as they are now, and live service also wasn't as much of a thing, so you had to make something genuinely good, and for me, Nintendo was the crowned king in quality. If we're talking about just the Wii era, you got games like Mario Kart Wii, Skyward Sword, Smash Bros. Brawl, Wii Sports, Mario Galaxy, DKC Returns, Mario Galaxy 2. Mario had a lot of good Wii games, okay? Personally, Smash Bros. Brawl was my childhood game. I would non-stop play the Subspace Emissary or just fight CPUs just because I thought it was cool. And with stuff like Stage Builder, I could always do something. It was also a great game to find glitches because that was fun to do too. And I feel like now is when I would say how Nintendo has fallen to greed just like Ubisoft has, but they really haven't, at least not with anything besides Pokemon. Nintendo is still the company that you think of when you want a quality game. Going from that decade-long gap from Brawl to Ultimate could have easily been awful, but it's not. Ultimate has provided me with a shit ton of enjoyment because it wants to be a celebration of gaming instead of a cash cow. I don't just fight CPUs like a dumbass child anymore, so I want more stuff to do, and the game delivers in spades. And I take all of that knowledge about Nintendo and apply it to a game like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Far Cry 6. Both games mainly supply you with a single player story, and that story is going to have a very similar gameplay loop with not much interesting stuff happening. It's more of a copy-paste content farm. And I think this is why people hate what single player games keep becoming. A bunch of shameless copy-paste, uninspired trash that is clearly being thrown out to the wolves for money. Overall, I'll say that single player games have been pretty damn good recently, and it's mainly because games like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok blow the fucking water out of Far Cry 6, Assassin's Creed, pretty much any of these other shitty games that these companies keep making. There are clearly still devs that care about how they make games, and I think a lot of those devs are in the single player game field. But I can't say the same about multiplayer games. Multiplayer games have been pretty fucking rough over the past couple of years. We'll get a game like Smash Ultimate, and then get a game like Battlefield 2042, and then Ultimate Chicken Horse, and then Overwatch 2. It's this mind-numbing cycle of good and bad, but most multiplayer games end up just focusing on money instead of fun. One of the easiest and also laziest examples I can think of is Overwatch 2. Blizzard's strategy was hyping this thing up by putting a 2 after the word Overwatch. Quite the bold strategy, but you know what, Blizzard, I'll do you one better. Make a game that isn't just Overwatch 1 with a fresh coat of paint. There's some meaningful changes in here, but that's just a fucking crumb to this giant steaming dumpster fire of a game. It was broken on launch. Fuck! There were 3 new characters at launch with 4 now. The game has disgusting progression and monetization, and it's very apparent that it really is just Overwatch, but with a 2 this time. Another thing is I feel like almost every multiplayer game has started to go this hype, competitive, ultra-fast route, and it pisses me off. Look at a game like Halo 3. It's pretty damn old and people could easily move on to Halo Infinite, but people stick around because of one main thing. it's fun. Halo in general was designed to be more of a party game while having some competitive aspects to it. A game that you could have fun playing with your friends while still being able to be competitive at the same time, and I think that's the perfect balance.
Hold on to your potato!
It's why games like Smash work so well. A retarded dog could walk over to the TV, pick Sonic, and mash its head on the controller and still find some success.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Then on the other side, you've got these turbo gamers both picking Fox-only Final Destination. It works for both sides without alienating a specific group of people because of being too competitive. And for me, I feel like League of Legends is the game that alienated me. I've picked this game up so many times, and every time I end up walking away hating it. It's so fucking complicated with over 150 characters, each with their own abilities and playstyles that you better master in your first minute of playing, otherwise some gremlin will invade your house later that night to feed you his bowl of insults. For all the people that love the game, that's fine. I don't have any problem with you liking a video game. But try to understand it from my perspective, someone who doesn't play the game a lot and doesn't understand it enough to have fun with it. You're immediately expected to understand how to use your character effectively, understand that weird-ass rune system, figuring out when to attack Dragon, how to attack an enemy, knowing what lane you're supposed to be in, knowing where to place a ward down, how to adjust your camera effectively. It becomes a fucking hell nightmare for a new player. League objectively does not have that simplistic charm that makes games like Halo or Smash stand out. Valorant is another great example. I used to play the shit out of this game and then I just stopped playing because I realized it wasn't really that the game was fun, but more because I was good at it. I mean, on the grand spectrum, I'm probably complete shit, but overall, when I do well, I feel great. And whenever I started to not do good in the game, I started to get angry and irritated. I wouldn't walk away from the game feeling better. I'd walk away feeling pretty awful, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's partially why the communities in competitive shooters are so toxic. The games are intentionally built to make you feel better the better you do, so when you play like shit, you start to realize that the game really isn't that fun, and that's what happened with me in Valorant, and Overwatch too. Competitively, Valorant is amazing. It's one of the most balanced competitive games I've seen with a constantly updated cast of characters and maps. But when it comes down to the pure fun factor, I think Valorant is seriously lacking. Unless you're getting tons of headshots and blowing everyone out of the condom, it just isn't fun. For a good chunk of those multiplayer games, you'll just see the devs add a couple of things and continue to add shit later, which can easily backfire. And for that, there's no better example than MultiVersus. I loved this game when it came out just because it was something that was fun. I feel like I could look at every character and say, yeah, that character's pretty fucking fun, since they were always unique and interesting even if they were broken at launch. But in the beginning, the game pretty much only had your standard quick play match. All they really needed to do was add in a ranked mode because, well, it actually gives me something else to do and work toward being better. I don't have to be a fucking game developer to understand that ranked is essentially just the base quick play mode with a couple of stage, timer, and rating system changes. From what I remember, the mode was announced back in August and I was pretty excited about it, and then months would pass and I would just be sitting there limp dick in hand waiting for my beloved MultiVersus to get one of the most basic updates it could possibly get. Eventually it turned into a fucking joke where me and my friend would constantly check their Steam charts and Twitter. Greetings MVPs, here's our new skit. Get the fuck out of here. Currently the game is a ranked mode and they released it in February. So it's about a full half a year. What happens to a game like MultiVersus, it's a slap to the face because the game still is fun, but I just don't want to play it anymore. It feels abandoned, and it seems like a common trend with free-to-play games now where they'll release a bare-bones game and it dies because of it. So while I was editing for this video, I got a little juicy info from the MultiVersus Twitter. MultiVersus is being shut down on June 25th as they prepare for full launch in early 2024. Just thought I'd put that in here. When I buy a game, whether it's free or not, I want to have fun with it and not have to rely on drip-feeding updates over the course of months to get to a slightly better game. How finished a game is a pretty clear way to see how much passion went behind it, and I can think of one specific group that thrives with that. I feel like indie games are the most consistent types of games, and it's pretty easy to see why. Most AAA devs have a shitty corporate problem that forces them to crunch or release a game that's extremely unfinished just because they have a deadline. But the great thing about being an indie dev is that you don't have to go through as much bullshit, and it shows. You've had recent indie games like Sifu and Stray, but I want to talk about some of the all-time classics, especially since the replay value for these games is huge. So I'm going to try narrowing it down to 4 indie games that have left a big impact. Let's start with Hollow Knight, a game that is so influential that I really wouldn't be doing indie games justice without talking about it. When I've played, the game is incredibly vast with amazing boss fights, amazing music, but I really can't believe how fucking good this game looks. Usually indie games are pixelated or very clearly drawn with a mouse, which isn't bad, but it's definitely not the best it could look. But Hollow Knight doesn't have any ordinary indie game graphics, and it honestly looks better than some AAA games. It's a very calming atmosphere, but then you combine that with the music? But then you got the boss music, and it's like... it's so good. This is going to be pretty common for other indie games too, but the thing about indie devs is that they understand what makes a game fun, and part of what makes a game fun is allowing the player to carve their own path. Unlike the giant corporations that fucking hate you doing anything other than what they intended for you to do, indie devs sometimes intentionally leave parts of their games buggy for speedrunning, or have entire boss rush sections for the game, and Hollow Knight is one of those games. It's created an enormous community with people that go for hitless runs of ridiculous world records, and it's nice seeing the devs don't want that to go away. Celeste is another game with an amazing community that's gone so far as to make practically an entirely new game with a free mod called Strawberry Jam. It's a great way for people to just keep playing something they love without having to rely so much on the devs themselves pumping out everything. And it's free, so, I mean, hell yeah. But what about the base game itself? Well, it's fun as hell too. You've got a nice message about self-love and perseverance with some of the most satisfying gameplay you can get, and, again, the soundtrack fucking slaps. Celeste also really does an amazing job with the movement. They'll introduce you to a mechanic, and then you'll chain one mechanic into another while bobbing and weaving in between shit. It forces you to go through these intense obstacle courses that demand you to try over and over again, and it feels amazing when you get it right. Speaking of movement, Rivals of Aether! A goddamn seamless transition, am I right or am I right? In a sea of dogshit Smash clones, Rivals of Aether stands out by being the most absurd, ludicrous shit I've seen in my life. You can play as Ultra Instinct Ronald McDonald. You can play as Hornet because you can't wait for Hollow Knight 2 any longer. You can even play as an actually fun Sonic. That's just Steam Workshop. See, there's an entirely separate game as well. Base Rivals of Aether actually does capitalize on having the extremely fast movement of Smash Melee without directly being Smash Melee. Instead of ledges, you have to wall jump, creating a pretty weirdly hype and fun way of getting back on stage. Where the game really does shine is how diverse and interesting the characters are. Every character can feel pretty complicated, but if you're able to learn how they play, you can perform some of the coolest, most fun combos I've seen in a fighting game. But by now you might be noticing a pattern. Indie games are consistent in almost every area, the communities surrounding them are amazing, and the music is almost always filled with bangers that I can play on my YouTube video without getting copyright claimed or strike fucking Nintendo. The community part especially has played a pretty big role in giving indie games a great reputation because they make you want to buy the game. You're not supporting a soulless, greedy piece of shit that churns out the same game every year for $70. You're supporting a team of passionate devs who just want to make a fun game, which is why there's not a whole lot of bad I can say about indie games. It's so easy to gush over them because they're consistently fun without either having microtransactions or being extremely unfinished. Then you've got my personal favorite indie game from the list, Pizza Tower. This game is fucking awesome. It completely embraces how ridiculous it is, and it's partially why the art style works. This could easily be an obnoxious ass art style for me, but it works with all of the wacky, ridiculous things Pepino does. And the music, of course, is amazing, but goddamn, the gameplay steals the show. You'll be rotating your ass in real life like you're playing with tilt controls with how fast you can go. Zooming through levels, suplexing enemies, trying to escape this giant pizza asshole, it's just so much fun. The combo system system is great too, since you're always going to be trying to move around looking for your next meal. There's a level called War where Peppino grabs a fucking shotgun and murders everyone. Tell me this game isn't a masterpiece. If I was gonna make a point with all of this without just constantly gushing over indie games, it's that indie games are fucking fun. They don't care nearly as much about making money and instead just want to focus on making a fun game and having a community. The devs are consistently interested in making a good experience while also being a super reasonable price for how much you'll be getting, and they are by far the most consistent type of games. So with all of this info swirling around in the cauldron, I wanted to see what it's made, and honestly, it's smelling pretty good in there. What I mean is overall games are in a pretty good state, with single and indie devs absolutely carrying gaming, mainly with Pizza Tower and Elden Ring mastering the fun and replayability factor. Multiplayer games have consistently been the bottom of the barrel because they like to focus on monetization and dopamine rushes, which is why they seem to be so popular and yet hated at the same time. Multiplayer games aren't inherently bad, it's just the monetization is usually fucking atrocious. And if you're someone that's consistently stuck on the Valorant grind, try out some single player games too, since it'll make you feel better and not have some asshole call you out every 2 seconds. And this year overall is looking much better for every aspect of gaming. We'll be getting party animals hopefully soon, or people are gonna riot. Street Fighter 6 is finally making it easy for casuals to get into the game. Tekken 8 looks amazing, and apparently Mortal Kombat 12 is coming. You've got Breath of the Wild 2, $70. Pikmin 4, Hollow Knight 2, you've had a ton of amazing remakes that have already come out. Elden Ring is definitely the crowned king when it comes to that, and it's my top recommendation right next to Pizza Tower. It has some questionable balancing, but you'll get hours and hours of time to play something with a ton of depth to it, and I hope more devs can learn from it, expand on what they already want to do, and create something beautiful. That's pretty much all I got. Before you go, I'd appreciate if you liked, commented, and or subscribed. Liking specifically would be really appreciated because it boosts the video and the hellscape that is the YouTube algorithm. Also, I had a Discord that was recently created, and I'll have the link down below if you want to join. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.